Well, welcome back, everybody. I'm Luke Ivanovic, your host of the Information Transformation Podcast, where we talk about everything from records and information management strategies to the latest Microsoft innovations to industry case studies and everything around how to digitally transform your organization to not just survive, but to thrive in the modern workplace. So, a lot of the times when organizations are looking to undergo a digital transformation, they put a lot of thought into what types of technologies they want to deploy. And for many organizations, that's the Office 365 suite. But the biggest challenge organizations face is in getting their employees, getting their end users to adopt the new technologies that their IT team deploys. And that's largely because most people, and I know I'm guilty of this, are resistant to change. So, how do you overcome that resistance and drive adoption in Office 365 or in other cloud technologies? Well, to answer that question, I brought on a very special guest today, Brenton Johnson. He is a certified Microsoft Service Adoption Specialist. He is the managing director of Uptake Digital and the co host of the Need to Know podcast. Brenton, how's it going, mate? And thanks for coming on the podcast today.
Oh, look, it's great that you reached out and asked me to be on your podcast. I'm really excited to talk about this topic, and it's one I don't get to talk about often enough.
Yeah, well, it's definitely a very important conversation to have. So, my first question for you, Brenton, is if you're an organization and you've decided you want to move into the modern workplace and adopt Office 365, what are the key considerations before you actually begin to deploy any apps or any technology?
Yeah, for me, you've got to put the technology last. One of the biggest mistakes I see is people go, "I don't understand technology. I'm going to get," like they would say, a finance team. They go, "I'm going to get a finance team, and they're going to do finance, right? And then I won't have to worry about it." And now that works to a certain extent, but say they never helped with budgeting, they never helped with planning the strategy forward or anything like that, and just said that's finance's responsibility, the business wouldn't last very long because finance doesn't have a full visibility over the business. Really, the only ones with that visibility is the senior leadership team. So it
Mhm.
really needs to start there. It needs to start with the board. It needs to be what sort of a business are we? Who do we want to be? How do we want to become? What are the expectations of our customers? And there needs to be a fundamental business conversation that comes down and a business narrative or story that comes down to IT and it comes down to all the different departments around, hey, this is where we're going. This is what we want to do. Microsoft call this envisioning. I call this just saying, who are you? What do you want to do? Where are you going? Those sorts of questions. And then if you give that to IT, they can come back and give you a great solution because they
Mhm.
go, okay, well, I know what you need. I can go and do this,
Yep.
I can do that. But if you give them, hey, we need IT, we need to be 21st century, you figure it out, and I don't understand technology, so don't ask me, you're going to get
Mhm.
a very, very bad situation. So you definitely need that. For me, it has to start from the top. And I suppose everyone says this about everything, but without a really clear vision and a really clear strategy and great communication from the executive team, it makes it very, very difficult to know where or how you should be doing these things because you don't have the guiding principles behind it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. But how do you actually go about getting executive sponsorships? Getting support from your C-level executives, from your upper management, and your decision makers in your organization.
I think a little bit is just raising their awareness level of what's possible. So I've been working with quite a large accounting firm at the moment, and the CEO he's fairly dynamic and he knows a fair bit of what's possible, but he doesn't really know. So he got us in to come in and just talk about, hey, here's how different things work in the cloud, and here's how the cloud works because the before that, all the directors were sitting around thinking the cloud is just a box in someone else's data center,
Yep.
which is true in theory. But once they started to see, oh, okay, so we could do this, and we could do this, and we could do this, and if we move this into here, it became a very, very different experience for them because they stop thinking inside the box, so to speak, and they start going, oh, actually, if our information was in SharePoint, for example,
Mm,
and we could access it with different applications, and we could do this and we could do that, and you could see their eyes lighting up with the possibilities. Now, does
mm,
that mean they're any better at technology than when they went in? Probably not, but now they're starting to get a bit more of an awareness of what's possible now once you move into those new technologies. And sometimes it's just a case of getting a simple proof of concept together. I'll talk about another example here where one of my friends, he worked for a listed company, and he walked in and found this process was taking about 400 hours a month of someone's time to do. That's
mm.
obviously not one person; it was a team behind it, and it was copying and paste. Really, that's all they were doing. So he built an app using the Microsoft technologies, and all of those people now no longer have to do that job. He built that in about 6 hours.
Mhm.
And then he went to senior leadership and said, hey, I reckon there's opportunities all over the business doing this sort
Yeah.
of stuff. And look at what these people are doing now. Now they're talking to customers or they're doing this or doing this sort of work, not copy and pasting and doing low value work. So I think that's the sort of narrative that I think we need to be pushing down. And that's what's going to spark the enthusiasm and actually get the ball rolling when people see, how does one business do this much revenue with these many people in the same business, same industry, have three times the headcount and offer a worse customer experience? That's what we're really talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a real challenge people have when they're trying to, garner executive sponsorship is they don't speak in the language of C-level executives. So, they're not talking about revenue generation or improving customer experience. They're talking too much perhaps about the technical side of things instead of talking about business outcomes. So, jumping around a bit, I spoke a little bit before about how the biggest challenge organizations face is overcoming resistance to change. So, what's the best way for an organization to try and overcome that natural resistance to change that you're going to inevitably have to deal with to some degree?
Yeah, look, what I've seen works the best is if you can work to people's self-interest. There's this old saying that you back the horse with self-interest written on the side of it, right? Most people are going to act in their self-interest most of the time, and if you can demonstrate how their life will be better,
Yeah.
um, then you can generally get people over the line. There's a few other things that need to be taken into consideration. I've seen other companies where they've been able to essentially reduce their needed headcount down by, say, six people through digital transformation. How many people did they lay off? Zero, because they said
Yeah.
the key to this whole digital transformation here is the people and them coming to us with ideas and solutions and business problems and all of this. And if they think they're going to lose their job as a result of that, then they're not going to do that anymore, right? So they said, yeah, we lost about six people over 3 years or whatever, but they'll, people moving on or redundancies, a lot of people got new job opportunities because of their successes and, they were moving up in the world. And they said, but we would not fire anyone. And that was a really key tenet of their whole strategy.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes these sorts of things aren't communicated well. And, they talk about in change management, the islands of certainty and, all of those sorts of like terms, and you bring change managers in, it's slowly, and those sorts of things. And all of that has to be done really well. But if you wanted stuff that was really good, you try and create exciting new things that are easy for people to implement, make a real impact on their lives. And if you can do that, you generally get pretty high adoption pretty quickly.
Yeah.
I use the Dropbox example all the time that, the amount of adoption I see with Dropbox and no one's ever been taught to use it. In fact, they've been told not to use it. But we
Yeah.
have this remarkable adoption of Dropbox. And the reason it is because it's easier than sending stuff in email and it's
Mhm.
easier than doing this and that. So, not saying Dropbox is the best or be all and end all, but all I'm saying is it provides a tangible benefit to people's lives. It's changing people's lives, and this is pre-cloud days, really, and that's what got the adoption. So think of it more in how can you help people do their job better?
Yeah, that why me factor is really important. So we spoke a bit before about executive sponsors, and it should be really clear to everyone that you know driving adoption, of Office 365 or any other cloud solution requires more than just your IT team. You can't just hand it off to IT and expect them to do everything. It requires different groups of people with different skill sets working together, and executive sponsors are one of those groups. So my question is, Brenton, what are the other groups of people required for, driving a successful adoption?
Yeah, great question, actually. I think people look at these sorts of things as projects. They might have a waterfall methodology, they might use an agile methodology or whatever. So you'll have your project manager. Microsoft likes to think about it more as a success owner. So, who is responsible for making sure this project is a success? Now, that's true of everything. You got to have an accountable person or accountability at every level. Now, you could say, well, the CEO is accountable for this success, but in my experience, the CEO's never got time. You want to you want to make it as easy and as low touch for the CEO as it's possible, because otherwise, if you give them too much to do, they have too many other demands. So you want to get them just doing the high value stuff, and then you want to get someone who can take responsibility for the success of the project. You've also got people who do the training. So you have trainers that they typically go around and teach people how to use the tools. They run training sessions. They might do some one-on-one training. And that's more of a structured, here's this new tool Teams, or here's this new tool SharePoint. This is how it works. What generally happens though is when organizations do training, they do it as a flash in the pan. All right, everyone's doing SharePoint training for 2 days. The end of it, you're going to know everything you need to do your job. If you have any questions, here's an email address. When we're talking about adoption, that's not necessarily the best approach. It might be okay. We'll do a bit of training, but then we're going to find people who, perhaps because of the nature of say Office 365, you can start using these tools. They might have already been using it for 6 months internally, so that they're your early adopters. And then you're going to have another group of people, champions, who are just excited about the possibility and they evangelize the solution, and they're telling everybody about it. And I think one of the key things with champions too is if you think about, a lot of people think champions is the 19-year-old young bloke who's brilliant at everything, has like three smartwatches, he's the best. But some of the most successful sorry, not trainers, champions are actually this guy who's 54 and doesn't use much computers and hasn't really done it, and then jumped in and said, "Hey, I really love this stuff." And it's their enthusiasm and it's their evangelizing of the product that actually gets people on board and excited and onto it. But they might not really know how to use the product much at all. But they know enough and they're engaged enough, and people want to come along for the journey just because they're infectious enthusiasm. So I think that there's some of the basic sort of groups. You're going to have your HR group, and depending on the size of your organization, it's all going to look a little bit different. But at the end of the day, it's if you don't have people excited about the technology and evangelizing, and that driving that culture around the change, that this is all a good thing and this is positive and that we're moving forward, and we've got the trainers here to help us do more in our job, and our lives are going to be better, and all of that sort of culture of change being good, not being bad and scary and people are going to lose their job. That's where you start to get really good adoption of technology. If you don't have those things, it's you know like you think yourself, you wouldn't want that in your business, so you wouldn't do it, would you?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. So when you're trying to drive excitement and drive awareness to get people engaged, how do you actually go about doing that? What are the strategies you can utilize? Because I feel that there's definitely a marketing and comms component to that.
Oh, definitely. I think communication. This is where if you've got a marketing manager in your organization, maybe his name's Luke, maybe it's not, and you want to go and find people who are good at communicating and messaging.
Yeah.
They're generally a good place to start. A lot of people go to IT for this stuff, and they go talk to level 3 server guy who's rolling out the technical thing, who might know more about Office 365 than anyone in the organization, and go, we need this communicated to users. And he writes up a very structured, the change will happen at this date, this will happen, this will happen. You go to the marketing people, and they make it a bit more fun and engaging, and they get pictures and all of this sort of thing. And the IT guy doesn't really understand why any of that needs to happen.
Yep.
They just see that as like a waste of time. You just have to communicate what they have to do. But that whole thing around the positivity and the change and all of that, I believe the marketing people are best placed to do that sort of stuff because they're so used to doing it. They're so good at that communication piece, and being able to find those success stories and engage with people, and customers and all of that sort of thing that actually drives that positivity. I think that's probably one of the best places you can go. Don't necessarily go to the expert. If there's one good takeaway I can get through, don't just come to me and go, "You're the expert, you do it all." Have a look at what you've got in your own organization, develop the capability. Definitely use some sort of support. Don't try and do it all on your own unless you're really confident that you can do it. But don't just rely on a consultant to come in and fix the problem for you, because that's really not what we're talking about here. We're trying to drive a culture of change, a culture of generally lean principles and positivity around new ways of working.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And as a marketing person, I will second that motion and say we do have our uses. We do.
Yeah, that you actually are justifiable.
Yeah, yeah, you can justify our salary. So going back to training, which is obviously an integral, part of the change management process, I think the goal for organizations should be to, get into a position where you have power users internally within your organization that can help train and assist others in adopting and understanding, Office 365 and or whatever cloud technology that you've deployed. So, what is the best way to approach a training strategy to create that kind of environment?
Yeah, I think a good place to start is to figure out where everyone is at and find out what the baseline is. One of the things we've started asking every person is now, where do they rate themselves, sort of 1 to 4, as a technology user? Because just looking at someone, you might have a fairly good ability to guess on their technical ability, but you probably shouldn't. So you should be asking them, do you feel like you're a beginner level? Because beginners will generally like support. They like being told how to do it and how to do things. But you get someone who might be a super user or a power user or feel a bit more competent. Generally, they find that sort of an approach condescending, or a waste of time, and they really want to be shown. They want to be taught in a slightly different way. They want to be saying, here's scenario, here's examples, here's this, here's that. Go off and do this stuff, and they want that challenge and a bit of a different approach. So, the first way I'd do it is go and actually figure out who your users are. I'd look at augmenting your adoption strategy with some online modules as well. So there's the ability to do that now. You can do videos and gamification and all of that. There's products out there that do that sort of stuff or use one. And yeah, and you know, do encourage that collaboration piece as well. So just because someone's a power user doesn't mean they don't have to be engaged and collaborative and work together and all of that. Because if you get to the core of this digital transformation, that's what it's about. We've realized that single people, if you want to do something fast, do it yourself. If you want to go far, go together.
Yep.
We've realized the best solutions come when you get multiple different disciplines and ideas and thought processes and experiences in a room, and you get them working well together and then using the online tools to enable that to happen. So you really do want to partner people up, maybe a mentoring program where someone who's a bit better at the technology or a bit more comfortable is actually empathizing and understanding and helping someone else in the organization go through that journey of skilling up as well, because they're
Hmm.
not going to need a lot of help. They're generally being able to go and self educate. They can do everything they need to do, but they need to see digital transformation in the organization's thing as everyone's on the boat together. And we can only go as fast as the slowest person. So if there's someone who's struggling with this particular part of what they do, you should be coming in and helping them up and not running off it as far ahead as you can, because that's not the point of the whole journey.
Yeah, I agree. So once you have that understanding of that baseline level of knowledge that end users have, how do you from there, track their progress?
Uh, it's a tricky one. The tracking and the measurement is a little bit difficult. That's where if you do the work up front and you set your success, what does success mean to you?
Mm.
So for a lot of my customers, one of the easiest things, and what I usually do when I'm first introducing to these people is, here's the problem of email. So I'll put up a slide and it's got Gough Whitlam and it's got the
Mm.
picture of an email, and they'll go, what are these two things have in common? It's like, well,
Yep.
Gough Whitlam was in office in 1974, and that's when email was invented. So why
Mhm.
is email still the go-to tool of the modern enterprise?
Yep.
And the answer is quite simple, because everyone has email. It's
Yep.
ubiquitous and it's easy. And then we go through, well, why does everyone hate email so much? And it's like, well, because it was designed to replace written letters. And as a replacement for written letters, it's brilliant. It's one of the best pieces of technology of all time. But
Yep.
as a file share tool, as a chat tool, as this, as that, it's a
Mm.
terrible idea. It's the worst
Yep.
product ever. But that's all people have really had, right?
Yep.
So, you're going to have people in the organization, particularly salespeople, who are going to continue to live in email for the foreseeable future, because their customers are in email and that's how they communicate, in phones and in person. But internal collaboration, there's so much better tools for doing that these days. And
Yep.
if you can start, you can actually track this very easily in Office 365. There's an Office 365 Power BI adoption pack. So
Mm.
Power BI is like a dynamic dashboard software where you can put numbers
Report.
in it and it'll make charts on the fly for you. And it's kind of like a report, but it's always alive and
Yes.
easy to work with and that sort of thing. So you can get a Power BI adoption pack which sucks all the valuable adoption metrics, like how many emails and how much team interaction and all of that, into a
Yep.
dashboard, and then ask it questions like, how many people are using Teams in the organization? It'll come up with a number. It'll show, the decrease in email traffic. Because, if you pull it up today, you can find people who are getting 2,000 emails a month.
Yep.
You're just
Yeah.
thinking, what else are they doing?
Yeah. Exactly.
That's
So
where I'd start with that, Luke.
yeah, well, it makes sense. And I know at McTish, with our clients, we use that built-in reporting as well in Power BI. And I know there's also some built-in usage analytics in the Microsoft 365 Admin Center as well. So my next question is, once you've rolled out your new technology, you've rolled out Office 365, what would be your tips for ensuring continued increase in adoption over time?
Yeah, for me, this is really a cultural question. So if you can get your culture right,
Yeah.
and a lot of this digital transformation is built around lean principles, as I said earlier. So get in there and read Jeffrey Liker's The Toyota Way. Get in and read 2 or 3 books around lean, so you can understand
Mhm.
what lean is and how it all works.
Yep.
And you'll just be amazed at what a difference that makes. Because the lean principle is, they have this thing called Kaizen. And at Toyota, you got to come up with a way of doing something better. And everyone has that as a KPI at the organization. You're going to come up with 2 inventions that make people's lives better or make the factory more efficient, whatever. Now, if you had that similar sort of it doesn't even need to be as formal as a KPI, but you might lose sight of it if it's not. If you have something like that where you're like, okay, well, how are we continuously improving in the organization and how are we measuring that and how are we having those conversations, or maybe we're having a monthly meetup internally, or
Yep.
maybe we're a little bit of a bigger organization and we want to have one with our customers and how we can work better with our customers, or we want to have one with other businesses in the space. So all the marketing managers of a particular region or type of company or whatever get together and they talk about what they're doing in their organizations so you can cross
Mhm.
pollinize those ideas. All of that sort of stuff is where you're going to get the most you know, ongoing engagement. If you treat it like a project and you go, okay, we
Yeah.
are now digitally transformed, nothing will change for another 3 or 4 years. We'll revisit it then. You've really missed the point of the whole process and you probably haven't done it correctly. You really need to be thinking about this as an ongoing process of improving and, really having that why at the center of it, whether it's we want to be more efficient. We want to be better at servicing customers. We want a better employee engagement. You're a senior executive is going to be best placed to articulate the vision and why you're doing it. But there's some of the reasons that I see, quite honest.
Yeah, no, it's all about changing that internal culture of the organization. So, this has been really insightful, Brenton. And one question we like to have our guests end with is, what are the three key takeaways you'd like to leave our listeners with today?
Yeah, look, if I had to say, here's the three things. I think the first one is you need to get the right people on the bus,
Yep.
and you need to make a decision to do this. Um, for me, it's also about focusing on the people.
Mhm.
That's probably just a bit about how I am and how I operate. That people are core at everything that I do.
Yep.
But for me, if we're talking about changing people's lives and we're putting the customer at the center of the experience, or we're trying to improve the way our staff can work, then that is all around people. It's not about technology. So,
Yep.
my second piece would be focus on the people, then the business, and then the technology in that order. And my third piece of advice is just have fun. If all
Yeah.
of this is a big drag and it's
Mhm.
boring and no one likes it, it feels like an audit. Sorry, auditors out there. I'm sure you have a ball doing what you do, but
Yeah.
for me, I don't want to go to work and go, oh, now I've hit my email limit for the day and I
Yeah.
failed digital transformation.
Mm.
We really want to change that to be a fun and inclusive and really having that focus on we're all doing this together, we're a team, and this is what we're doing. So if you can make it fun, make it fun.
Yeah, exactly right. Well, that's actually all my questions for today. So thank you for coming on, Brenton. It's been really insightful. Before we finish up, for anyone listening that might want to hear more about what you have to say on these kind of subjects, do you have anything you want to plug? Do you want to tell people where they can find you or listen to you?
Yeah, look, if people are interested in connecting, LinkedIn is the best place. So I'm just Brenton Johnson on LinkedIn. I'm pretty easy to find. BrentonJohnson.com. If you can't find me on LinkedIn, contact Brenton at Twitter. But yeah, the easiest way is just to find me on LinkedIn, reach out. If you have any questions, happy to help or point you in the right direction. Um, that's probably the best way to go.
Awesome. And don't forget to check out the Need to Know podcast as well.
Yeah, if you're interested in hearing the best and best parts of Microsoft news, we're a news and interview podcast, so we'll probably be interviewing someone quite special. We haven't quite worked out the details, but I'm sure as soon as that pops up, you'll all get a
Yes.
notification to go and check that out.
Yes, you'll definitely be getting a notification from me at some point about that. Well, thank you again, Brenton, and thanks for everyone who tuned in to listen today, whether you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or on the website. And hopefully we'll see you guys all again next month. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Luke.